Hello and welcome to Memories of a Musician. I am your host, Vito and I'm bringing you this show live from my home in Naples, Florida. On Memories of a Musician, I plan to cover my musical journey as a music educator, musician, composer, producer, music director, and music business entrepreneur. In addition, each episode will feature a special guest. Are you looking forward to hearing the stories of many successful musicians? Tune in every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Memories of a Musician will be streamed live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. In the event you would miss an episode, each one will be recorded and archived for future viewing. And here we go. Well, good evening. Hello, and welcome to Memories of a Musician. I'd like to welcome you, and today this is our maiden voyage, so to speak. So there's lots of things that we're going to learn as we go through this process. The first thing I want to share, before I even start to tell you a little bit about my journey in the music business, I want to share with you the genesis of this program, of how I came up with this program. So for many, many years, I was a music educator, and I was a musician that performed. I had my own band for 49 years, We Three. And in addition to that, later on, I became a musical director for several international artists, as well as the Sicilian Tenors, which was a more of a domestic artist, and we toured pretty extensively throughout the United States. And with this busy schedule that I had, I can't tell you how, running from one job to another and for so many years. And then the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit, I was in Las Vegas with the Sicilian Tenors. We had some shows out there. And all of a sudden, everything stopped. Well, there was a good news to that story. And the good news was I was back in my studio, and I was able to take the time and focus to compose and record my first symphony number 1, which was on my bucket list for many years. So that's another story for another night, which I'm going to share with you. But in the meantime, all of a sudden, I find myself sitting in the living room, and now I'm no longer performing. I'm retired from performing. I'm retired from teaching. And I'm sitting here thinking about all the things that I did. And I thought to myself, maybe it's a good idea to share some of these stories and some of the things that I did. And so many musicians that I know that are in the same position, and some are still working a little bit here and there. And everybody has some really interesting stories to tell. So that's how this all came about. I just thought, this might be a nice thing to do and to share with We Three, which was my band for 49 years. We had a big following, a big fan base. And I think if a lot of those folks can get on and know this show exists and is happening, that's going to spread the word, and they're going to come on, and we're going to show some things from We Three down the line, and some of the music that we, of course, did and so forth. So that's the beginnings, and that's how I came up with the idea to do this podcast. Now, my particular journey as a musician started very, very young. I was 3 years old, and my parents bought me a toy accordion for Christmas. And the reason they did, every Saturday night back then, and this is in the early 50s, a Lawrence Welk show was on Saturday night. We had a black and white television. It was like a big box piece of furniture. And they, on the Lawrence Welk himself was an accordion player. And he had a great accordion player. Myron Florin was also on the show. And then he had a gal, Joanne Castle, who eventually became known as a ragtime piano player on the show, but she did originally play the accordion. So at one point in the beginning of his show, Lawrence Welk show, they had 3 accordion players. And my parents told me that every time one of the accordion players would play, I was like mesmerized in front of the screen. And so they decided to buy me a toy accordion. So they did. For Christmas, I was 3 years old. And then they heard that I started picking up playing melodies on the accordion, and they thought, we better get him some lessons. So my older sister, Judy, who I pretty much grew up with, Judy was 4 years older than me, and one of her friends in school took accordion lessons from a guy that came to their house to teach her. So my sister got the name of the teacher, and my parents called, and then next thing you know, Johnny Georges comes knocking at our door. And when he came in, my mother and dad were there, and my sister Judy and I were there, and he looked at her and said, when do you want to start her? They said, not her, him. Him? Yeah. Well, I was so small that my dad really had to, you take the smallest accordion, is called a 12 bass accordion, meaning there's 12 buttons on the left hand. 6 were bass notes and 6 were chords, major chords. And so my dad, this accordion, which was the smallest accordion you could possibly get, was so large for me, he had to tie the straps in my back with a handkerchief to hold it on me to play. And so there I started with the accordion at 4 years old. Now I'm 4 years old, starting to take lessons, and I fell in love with the instrument. And honestly, I haven't played it because of health issues, and I had both shoulders replaced and things. And because I haven't played it in 4 years, but it's still my favorite instrument. It's a beautiful, beautiful instrument to have an orchestra at your fingertips. And so this is how I got started. And throughout the history of We Three, we had a pretty rich history. As I said, 49 years. And I think after, I think it was about in the 90s, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. I'm going to have him tell us for sure. But I became, it was about 1981. I really went into the recording studio to write string arrangements for a producer by the name of Tom Causey. And actually, Tom became a very good friend of mine over the years, and he's going to be a guest on a future show. And he was in the music industry. He wasn't a musician per se, but he produced, and he was a marketing guy for major labels. So so I go in the recording studio, and in the process, I meet this guy named Ernie Pontiere. And Ernie was the kind of guy that you meet him. It doesn't matter how long you've known him. It's like you knew him forever. And we just melded together. I mean, we just became very, very good friends immediately. And I was working on some projects in the studio. And then Ernie went on the road. He was on the road with the Four Coins. He was on the road with the Lettermen. And then after the Lettermen, he decided to come back to Pittsburgh and get a teaching position, which he did. And I told him, you come back and I'll bring you in my band as the lead vocalist. So now We Three added another person. So we were We Three plus one. So what do? We just still called it We Three. And as the group grew, it actually became pretty funny. When they would post pictures, and we had 5 guys in the picture, and they were advertising us playing a festival somewhere in some city. And they'd say, look at this. It's called We Three, but there's 5 guys. Well, this guy's uncle probably got him into the band and whatever, the jokes. So anyhow, that was my introduction to Ernie in the studio. And then I brought him into the band, and he was with We Three for, I want to say 20 years. And when Ernie came into the band, it took our band literally to another level, because we started out in 1965 playing dance music, playing big band music. They were the folk sock dancing, the people that, grew up in the big band era. And so it was interesting because, all of a sudden, as time went on, we had to evolve and do different music, which we did. But Ernie came in the band, and for the first time, we had a true vocalist with the band. And I don't mean that to disparage Greg Grenick, because Greg is our saxophone player, and he was a terrific saxophone player. He's going to be a guest on the show in a couple of weeks. And he started singing, and he did a great job. No questions about that. But Ernie Pontiere was to me a polished vocalist. So with that, I would like to bring Ernie onto the stage. So give me 1 second here. There he is, Ernie Pontiere. Welcome, Ernie.
Hey, how are you, my friend?
How are you doing tonight?
Great. That was beautiful what you said. So thank you, everybody, and good night.
I could tell you must be in a cold climate because you have a sweater on and everything.
Don't go with me there. You're my only friend that sends me the weather where you live once a week.
Well, I gotta, rub it in a little bit,
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Well, enjoy that cold weather in Pittsburgh. In Naples, Florida, I gotta tell you, it's a little cooler than I like it. But like today, it was about 75.
Oh, I feel bad.
And it only goes down in at night now, but in the high 50s or low 60s, so it's not too bad. I like actually the summer the best when it's 90 and I can set the pool temperature to 85. It's perfect,
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So tell me, Ernie, first of all, I told you how I got started, my first instrument, and how I got started. How did you get started? I know you played the trombone, and that was what you majored on in college before you added vocal.
Yeah.
Was that your first instrument?
It really was. I was in 3rd grade, and my mother and dad took me to this church in McKees Rocks. A nun came out, and she was a musician, and she had all these instruments. And I'm going along, and I said, "I want that one." And I said, "What do you want that? That's the biggest one. I want that one."
Wow.
And it was pretty much that simple. And she put it up to me and told me how to hold it and everything. And I couldn't get past 5th position. I was so small. She goes, "You know what? You're going to have to wait with him. Come back next year."
Oh, jeez.
So I said, "Well, I don't want to, So my dad says, "Ernie, let's listen to the nun. Let's go." And so we left. And by that time, I'm in 4th grade at Burkett Elementary, which is part of the Montour School District. And, they still didn't start kids back there in 4th at that time, because that was, in the late 60s. And they started kids in 5th grade, but I started in 4th grade. When I got to 5th grade, who do you think my teacher was but John Fisher?
Jeez, yeah.
Remember John? He was one of the assistant band directors.
Not the late John Fisher, but he was
the late John Fisher. Yeah.
He was actually a fraternity brother of mine, Alpha Phi.
So, and that started it. And from there, my dad met Joe Peakey, who was the band director there at the senior high, and they were friends since high school, and they rekindled their friendship, and I started taking private lessons from Walter Frust and the Rocks and so on and so forth. But it wasn't going to be, you understand, we have 7 trumpet players in our family.
Wow.
Ralph Rubino and Aliquippa and his son, my uncle Tony Gargaro and his son Kenny Gargaro. You know them. You know Kenny.
Yep.
And my other uncle, Uncle Carl, and his son Carl Jr., all trumpet. And then my brother took trumpet.
Your brother Rusty, yeah.
Am I rusty? And I'm not doing trumpet. I'm going to stay with trombone. And my Uncle John on the Pontiere side was accordion player.
I knew
So,
that.
yeah. So that's how that started.
So what really, when do you think that music became a passion for you? I mean, look, I tell people all the time, and I told my students, if you can't survive as a musician or make a living as a musician, let's put it that way, unless you have this passion for music. It's the only thing that you want to do, and
Right.
you're willing to do, whatever comes up, whatever comes down the road.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, knowing how your career went, I'm sure you had a strong passion for music. And when do you think that really took hold with you?
Well, I think I stayed in the band program at Montour and went through the ranks. And by the time I got to ninth grade, Joe Peaky was a big influence on me. And it was about that time when I started really getting serious about this. This is something that I would really like to do. So I concentrated on it, and I worked pretty hard at it. And then you meet the Deannies at Folk Wines, and they were encouraging, and so that's how that came about. And by the time I became a senior, I knew this is what I wanted to do. Little did I know later on that I would become a vocalist as well. It was all trombone. I mean, through
College that you applied to was in Berkeley, the Berkeley School of
I
Music.
started at Berkeley College of Music. I didn't think I'd get in, but I auditioned and got in.
Okay.
A great music teacher, great trombone instructor, Phil Wilson.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he sent us away to Philadelphia to Donald Reinhardt a couple times a year and take lessons from him. But at the end of that year, my parents realized that I was a music ed major there, one of the very few. They were almost all performance majors.
Right.
So, they said, none of these credits are going to transfer to Pennsylvania if you ever want to teach school. So my dad and I talked about it, and that's whenever my sophomore year, I started at Edinburgh.
Oh, is that the reason you transferred over? Because
I
you would
would have had to have taken
recertified.
all of my academics again, and were Harvard professors coming in to
I see.
Berkeley teaching us the academics. But
So when you went to Edinburgh, then you were still a trombone major there before you
I was
started.
a trombone major, yeah.
How did you discover the fact that you had a voice?
Well, Vito, I got to tell you, I was very fortunate. I mean, it was a blessing from God, and this started in high school. I mean, I don't know if you believe me, but in 10th and 11th grade, I was playing in a band called the Domains with my cousin Kenny again, Gargaro.
Yeah.
And we were playing at the Staircase Lounge, and I was 10th and 11th grade, and they just told them I was 21. And I was working and trying to get up and go to school and everything else. And I was just fortunate to always get a gig. And so I got to Berkeley, and I got a gig with a great band in the New England area. I played that entire year. I get to Edinburgh, and I meet 4 other music majors and say, hey, we just lost our sax player, but you want to join our band and you just play trombone? I said, fine, that'd be great. So we started playing, and the gigs kept coming and coming. Finally, the lead singer, his name was Dave McMillan. He was a voice major there. All 5 of us were music majors. And he said, can you sing at all? And I says, yes, I can. I can sing. He goes, you come to my apartment tomorrow. I'm going to give you a voice lesson. I want to see what's going on. We did that for a month. And I kept singing and singing. And all I did was sing all day. Finally, he came and he goes, that's it. I'm done with you. Go take lessons from the voice professor.
Wow. Okay.
So I would walk out of my trombone lesson, go right to the voice professor my sophomore, junior, and senior year.
And was that the group called Spectrum?
That was Spectrum.
Can I
Yeah.
put a picture up of Spectrum?
I think you might. Yeah, there we are in our
Yeah.
beautiful tuxedos at the point. You tell that's in the very early 70s.
Ruffled shirts. We all have those.
I'll have a funny story about that tux later on in the show, but
Okay.
yeah, that was now Wayne in the middle with the flute. He was our drummer, and he was a phenomenal drummer. But he became a flute major at Edinburgh and went and got his master's and PhD in conducting. Tom was a baritone horn major and playing bass guitar, and there's Dave up in the other corner playing guitar, lead singer, and John Carroll was our keyboard player who also played trombone. So we played a bunch of different instruments in that band, and I mean, for 3 years we were a big band up in college. So again, I had a gig. I always had a gig.
Yeah. So let me ask you, when was after? I know this was much later, Gigolo, but it was a Pittsburgh-based band.
Oh yeah, Gigolo was. Yeah, I had already.
Or that was
Yeah,
before.
Gigolo was later on, definitely later on.
Was it after the Four Coins?
Four Coins were first.
Okay.
When I finally graduated college,
I want to put a picture up of the Four Coins. I see. Who are these guys? I see you and I see Sputsy Sparacino.
That's right behind me.
Yes.
John Thompson from Jersey is, if I'm looking at it, to my left, and then Bo. That's Bo Wagner.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Unfortunately, Bo, we just lost Bo about 6-8 months
that's
ago.
what I was going to say that. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's when Sputz and I actually met, and we were roommates. We hit it off, and to this day we're like brothers. In fact, I just got off the phone with him yesterday.
And one of my former students, I think, played trombone in this on the touring band with this Matt Welch. Was he?
Matty. Yeah, Matty was a trombone player. Gary Allen was a
former student of mine.
player.
I'm going to have him on the show at some point in the future too. But yeah, I remember that he was touring with you guys. So you toured all over the country with the Four Points, huh?
We did. And,
okay. And then when you came back to Pittsburgh, is that when? Well, is that when the Gigolo started, or did you come?
No. Then before the Four Coins. As soon as I graduated college, my dad, bless his heart, he goes, "Okay, so, you're done with school. When you're going to start applying for a teaching job?" I said, "Dad, I don't want to teach school."
Okay.
I said, "I don't want to teach." He goes, "What do you mean you don't want to teach?" I said, "I'm going on the road." And he said, "Great one." He says, "Well, right now I got this gig at the Holiday House, and this is a funny story. I know you want me to say some funny stories to the end, but I'll tell you this one real quick. Remember Ralph DiStefano at the Holiday House?"
Yes, sure.
He ran the Holiday House band. And, they wanted to start a trio, so Andy Yelch called me, a keyboard player, and we had a drummer. And so when the band and the main act went off, we came on and did dancing for the people, and that was my gig for about a year.
Okay.
And it was great. It was really fun. It was a good gig, and and it was fun hanging because Joe Peakey, my high school teacher, was in the orchestra a lot of times playing on violin, and it was cool, working with a former teacher. And so I got tired of that, and I says, "Hey, Dad, you know what? I'm going to leave." I said, "What do you mean you're going to leave?" He goes, "I'm moving to LA." So I basically sold everything I owned except my microphone and my trombone, and I drove. Took me 4.5-5 days to drive to LA, and I went and knew some friends from high school. I stayed with them and just tried to get pickup gigs and all that stuff, which leads me to I was there about a year or so. And then Gary Allen called me, says, "Hey, we got a really nice group. We're missing one singer. We need a tenor with a falsetto. Well, we got 3 other great guys. I want you to meet a guy named Sputsy." And I flew in and I flew back to Pittsburgh, and then that's how the Four Coins started.
That's awesome. So that was the Four Coins. And then what happened after the Four Coins? By the way, let me interrupt you. I have, people can write in and say something. Fred Danchenko just looking good. He's of course in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania, not far from where you are. And someone wrote in. His name is Josh Christopher. official. It says, love the roads in the foreground. I don't even see the roads. It must have been on the other one of the pictures. And then how about Lori Yednak, sounding great in Oak Island, North Carolina. So
Wow.
Lori was the Lori was the owner, the last previous owner of Progressive Music in McKeesport, and he worked there from the time I think he was in high school. And a great guy. And when I was at West Mifflin as the head of the department, I worked with Lori and so forth and the Josh Christopher was Josh Smith, is a former student of mine. Hi, Josh. Welcome to the show. Anyhow, so go ahead.
Well, the Four Coins broke up in '79, and Sputzy wanted to start something, just the two of us, and I said no. I said I think I'm just gonna hang around and see what goes on, and then I was in numerous bands after that, like Ragtag, with the great Marty Koffler playing guitar. I mean, that band worked all the time, and Jimmy Blazer on keyboards, and oh my goodness, I played with Jimmy Hollywood for a while. I mean, band after band after band after band, and then and while I was working in those bands, I would also start teaching as a permanent sub.
Okay.
I started at St. Bernard in Mount Lebanon as a band director with Jim Tucci was my advisor, and then I would teach at Montour at Weather Elementary School or wherever they needed me. So that went on for a while, and then I got to meet Benny, the Benack family, the great Benny Benack family. Benny Benack Sr. hired me and put me in his band. And you know how that band was phenomenal, great musicians with all Joe Campus charts. I got to be very close friends with Benny Jr. and Flip and Claudia, and that was around for a while, and then all of a sudden I get this call from Sputzy. Says, "Hey man, you're not going to believe what we got started here, but we're missing a few pieces," and this was Gigolo. So I would be on gigs with Benny.
Mm-hmm.
They would be over normally around 11 or 12 o'clock. Well, Gigolo was just in their second set by then. I'd rush to the gig, and I started learning the repertoire back at the soundboard with Tony Scrow. I started learning parts. You remember a place called Heaven in downtown Pittsburgh. And then finally, we just worked myself in there. And man, the chemistry in that band was just unbelievable. Vocals. What's that?
Picture of Gigolo.
Yeah,
there it is.
There's Gigolo. Yeah.
So,
Sputzy made a great decision. Tony Scrow, he's on the end. That's our sound engineer on the end, and he's still mixing. He's a great engineer. All over town he works.
Yeah.
He was our engineer, and boy, he had that band down to a T.
I see Joey,
Sputzy, myself, Gary Carolla, Ronnie Orico, great drummer, and God bless Joe Arger on the end. We lost Joey years ago. One of the best bass players I've ever worked with. So that band was a force in Pittsburgh for a number of years.
Yeah, really a great band. Yeah, I remember. Okay, so then tell me about. Let's talk about the Lettermen. When did you? Was it after this whole Gigolo thing? And I know there was.
Gigolo. Gigolo had ended, and
right. There's always good, bad, and the ugly. There's always good, bad, and ugly with this business. And the end of the Gigolo career became a little bit tense.
That was a rough one. That was a rough one. But I mean, I think if you talk to every one of those members, they would probably all tell you that we wished we would have done some things differently, because I honestly believed that band had, because we were getting to the point where we were doing originals on stage, and our rehearsal hall was Hollywood Music. His whole upstairs. Gary and Jimmy just said that's yours. Just rehearse when you want, because we bought all of our equipment from them. Mm-hmm. And But I mean, we've all mended our ways, and I mean, today we're close, but we had it all. We had it was all R&B music. It was all Sputsy's idea with that too,
Hmm.
and pretty much 6 white guys on stage doing all R&B, and it worked. The vocals were incredible. The musicianship was incredible. You got to have a great drummer for that band, which we had one of the very best with Ronnie Orico. Joe Argero with him was a killer bass player. Keyboards, we had it all covered, and it just broke up, and we made our amends. And I mean, I love all those guys, and if you talk to any one of them, they'll tell you the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
The business beats. It's just
So I know. So after Gigolo, when
after Piccolo again, Sputsy said, "Let's get out of here. Let's move to Vegas," and he did move to Vegas, and uh, had a nice duo with a good singer out there, and
okay,
spent some time out there. But that's when I decided I was done with band. I'm done. That took the wind out of my sails. I was brokenhearted when that band broke up, and I
uh-huh,
said, I'm going to try to do this on my own. All I ever wanted was a record contract. I'm going out, and I'm going to try to do this on my own. So for the second time, I moved to Los Angeles, and I was a little older and more prepared this time, and I was able to pick up a lot of pickup gigs, and
yeah.
that's how I met my
That
producer.
at
What's
that
that?
point, I really knew you well, and we did some original songs that I had written for
Yes,
you, and
yes,
you took
yes.
them with you out to L.A. trying to get your deal and all that stuff. And that's when I met your cousin Bruce Bartolotta, God rest his soul.
Yeah, he was
Was
the one that set it all up. He raised the money from 4 backers to have me go into the studio. At that time, it was 40. I think it was $40,000 for 4 songs. But
yeah.
Tom Perry, who was my producer, hired, and the head engineer, had multiple hits on so many artists. He hired the best. He had Jeff Porcaro on drums and Mike Porcaro on bass and Danny Huff on lead guitar. I mean, it was just incredible. I was in awe when I walked into that studio,
Yeah,
and we recorded a demo, and like a lot of other people, just couldn't get signed.
yeah,
Um,
tough.
it was tough, but you got to understand. And I saw a pattern growing out there. They were These A&R people. They were signing artists that were in their late teens and very early 20s, and by that time, I was in my 30s,
Hmm.
and a lot of people just said, "You know what? That's not what they're looking for. You're a little old for this now." And I mean, I just wanted somebody to tell me, "Look, you don't sing well, and I don't like your voice. I don't like the tunes. I don't like this. I don't like that." But nobody could tell me. So again, you know, so I kept gigging, and then Greg Macaluso comes in. Your friend Greg comes into the picture because he was working with Wayne Newton.
Yep. Music
Um,
director.
he introduced me to Don Vincent, who was Wayne Newton's music conductor and arranger from Dormont,
Right.
Pennsylvania.
He was from Pittsburgh. Yep.
Yeah, and he said, I met Don, and he goes, "Hey, can you read music?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Fine." He goes, "Everything I write for Wayne, he wants to hear." So he says, "I need you to come up to my little studio up in this." He lived in a beautiful apartment, penthouse up in Santa Monica, and he says, "I'll pay you $100 every time you come." And $100 back then was like, oh my goodness, I can eat for the week, in LA. So I'd come up, and we got to be good friends. I ended up doing a couple of gigs with his son, who was a great guitar player, and we became friends. We went to the Dodger games when the Pirates were in town, and so he tells Greg, he says, "Look, Wayne's putting a road band together, a 32-piece orchestra. I'm missing a trombone player. You know anybody?" He goes, "Yeah, why don't you hire Ernie?" And he said, "What do you mean hire Ernie? He's a singer." He goes, No, he can play trombone too." He goes, "Get him on the phone." And he goes, "I'm sending you a ticket. You're going to be in Lake Tahoe in 2 days. Get your lip ready." And that was it.
That was it. Yep.
That was it. And then I ended up in Wayne Newton's band. And,
Before
I
we,
got to tell you, I learned a lot from that man.
oh, I'm sure.
I
Uh,
really did.
be-
He was a true
before,
pro, treated his people very, very well. And I'll tell you a very short story.
okay.
A manager or the agent messed up the booking at Constitution Hall in Washington, D.C., I believe it was. And there might have been 200 people there. They had the wrong date. And everybody wanted him to cancel. And he goes, I'm not going to cancel. He goes, those people paid for me to sing. He didn't cut one song. He sang as hard as he sang for a full house. I'm sitting back there in the band saying, you know what? There's a lesson to be learned here. So
this is the business we've chosen.
that's exactly right. And then all of a sudden, I had a friend that used to work for Tambellini's, the agency Tambellini's, and she was in LA, Michelle, and she says, Ernie, you belong in the Letterman. I said, listen to my demo. I'm doing pop rock. I know the Letterman music is a lush ballad and close harmony. I said, she goes, I'm telling you, you could do that. She did this for months. And I said, if I sent my tape and my pictures to Tony Butala, the Letterman, would you leave me alone? Because I knew he'd never call me. And I sent it. And sure enough, I'm like in my first month with Wayne on the road. And Tony calls and says, I got to hear you live. I like what I'm hearing. And from then on, that's when I came to visit you again. And I said, look, let's come up with, he wants to hear a fast tune and a slow tune. Let's go to work. And you help me with that.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, I'm at the Trump Plaza in Atlantic City at 9 o'clock in the morning singing for Tony Butala. And in comes my cousin Bruce again.
Hey, Ernie, everyone's looking at you and I on this screen. Anyone that's tuned in, I want to put up a picture because we're talking about, the 90s, 80s, 90s. I want to show everybody this picture. You and I, again, like a few years ago,
Yeah.
right? That's actually in my living room in South Park, and that was quite a while ago. I can't even figure the year. Do you know the year based on the color of your hair?
Well, I still have some black hair left, and I have hair.
You had hair. Anyhow, I wanted to show that. So now I want you to tell. So you auditioned for the Letterman. I know you.
Yeah. And he actually, it was probably the hardest and most thorough audition I had ever taken. And I was glad I went to visit you because I was prepared. He says, he just walked into the ballroom with Donovan and the music director who played piano. And he goes, hey, you Ernie? I said, yeah. He goes, I'm Tony. Sing. He sat down and that's all he said was sing.
Sing, yeah.
Give the piano player your music. And thank God I had the chart, you wrote for me. And he starts playing and I sang The Greatest Love of All and went up and hit a note he liked. And I said, that I've heard enough. Come over here. He goes, come around the piano, put them on the melody. Okay, put them on the bottom. Okay, put them on the top.
Yeah.
He said, you're a tenor. And I said, I am. And he says, well, all I hire is baritones with falsettos. I said, well, I'm a tenor with a falsetto. He goes, you have a falsetto too? And I said, yes.
Yeah.
So he said, let me hear it. And a theme from A Summer Place or something like that. And that's the lead. The falsetto part's the lead in that. And then my cousin Bruce, 3-4 hours later, is pounding out a deal and a contract. And that was it.
All right. I'm going to put up a picture with you with the Letterman, and I'm going to play a little clip of the you singing. And you mentioned the word falsetto, and I'm sure most of our audience probably knows what that is, but maybe some don't. And you could maybe explain real quick before I put this picture up what falsetto is with your voice, what you do with your voice.
It's basically a higher range. I would say it's a little more prevalent with males. And there seems to be some kind of a controversy with females having falsettos. Some believe they do, some believe they don't if you talk to different voice teachers. But it's a voice that I've used ever since I started singing back in the 70s with Dave McMillan at Spectrum. It's something you got to work at. Mm-hmm. It's another voice on top of your head voice that can normally go up another octave to an octave and a half, which is what it was for me. Think about Earth, Wind, and Fire without Philip Bailey. Or think about Frankie Valli. Even the old crooners like Andy Williams had a beautiful falsetto. It's a voice that's used quite a bit. I would say mainly it's used in the pop vein in jazz. I mean, Mel Torme, he could scat and falsetto. I mean, it was, I fell in love with that voice. I really, really did.
Well, here's a picture of you with the Letterman. Of course, Tony Butala on the one end, and that's Donovan Scott T right in the middle.
Right. He goes by Donovan T now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Does he? Well, when
They're still together, by the way.
When I was playing piano for them, it was Donovan Scott T, but he's Donovan T now. Huh?
Yeah.
So listen to this, Ernie.
We'd like to end the first half of our concert this evening with a song that was a hit for the Lettermen way back in 1967, 1968. Now, what we want you to do is see if you can remember just what it was you were doing when this was the big hit.
Well, I think I'm going out of my head. Yes, I think I'm going out of my head. Over you, over you. I want you to want me. I need you so badly. I can't think of anything but you. Just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. You'd be like heaven to touch. I wanna hold you so much.
I'll settle up top.
And long last love has arrived. And I thank God I'm alive. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. Going out of my head over you. Out of my head over you. Out of my head day and night. Night and day and night. Wrong or right, I love you, baby. And if it's quite alright, I need you, baby. To walk a lonely night. I love you, baby. Trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd like to end the first half of our concert this evening with a song that was a hit.
So I'm going to remove that picture.
Yeah, that's a great example of falsetto.
Yeah, and actually, I have one of my favorites that you did with We Three. There were two of them that I loved. One is Lost in the 50s, and the other one was Unchained Melody.
Yeah. Wow.
Can I play? Let me just play a little bit, and I'm going to pull up a picture as I do this. Look, here's a picture with. There's three. That's with the late Nick Gimliano.
Yeah, Miss Nikki.
Yeah, Greggy Grenick, Greg, and you and I. And so I'll play this sample first. This one. By the way, this is a live recording. This is not studio.
Oh, that's
this
live.
This was never released. This is live. And then the other example that I have with that is this one here.
Good for your touch. Lonely time. And time goes by so slowly. And time can do so need your love.
Now, that was a live recording. And what amazes me is how you went from that falsetto and dropped back into your regular head voice, you know?
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. But it gave me chills when I would be on stage and you'd be singing that and the dance floor's filled with people. I mean, completely crying. It was a real kick. It was a lot of fun. So while we're talking a little bit, about We Three, two things happened. When you finished it was about a 3-year stint with the Lettermen.
Yeah, a little less than 3. Yeah.
Yeah, you came back. You had said to me, and I'll never forget this because Ben and I were building our house in South Park, and I had hired. Well, if you remember, Judy Fiegel. Judy's father was our architect, and and I had these architectural drawings of our house. And I remember you coming out, and the house was not even, the walls weren't up. I mean, the studs were up, I think, and you were getting a picture of what the house was going to be like, but it wasn't certainly not even near completion. And of course, Vito and Gina were little. They were in maybe, I want to say they were like in 3rd and 5th grade, if not 2nd and 4th grade. So they were little. And, you said to me, Vito, and tell us how many shows you did a year with a Letterman when you were with them.
Letterman back there was extensive travel. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed that our trip to Tokyo, Japan. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, we were on an airplane just about every day.
Every day, yeah.
I still have my log. I think we were doing around 220 shows a year. It was nice if we would go into Vegas or Tahoe, or there was a nice club in Washington, D.C., and we would stay someplace maybe for a week, like at the Nugget, in Nevada. And that's where we recorded our live album. The Letterman live album was from the Nugget. We got a little bit of a rest. You could do your gig and go up to your hotel room and not on an airplane. But most of the time, it was hit and run. And that's
breath of fresh air. And I know that you did so many shows. And then, so I'm going back to my story of our building our house in South Park. And you said to me, Vito, I've been on the road with the Letterman now for 3 years, and I'm tired. I don't have a house. I don't have a car. I don't have a wife. I don't have any children. You were seeing everything that I was doing. And I had the teaching job in West Mifflin. Plus I had my band and I was playing. And so I said to you, well, Ernie, if you want to come back to Pittsburgh, we'll get you a teaching position and I'll bring you into the band as the lead vocalist. It's as simple as that, so it's not a problem. Whenever you decide to pull the trigger, boom, you got the gig. And that's how that all happened and came about. But at the same time, I remember your first teaching job, and I remember Nuncy Deanne at Folk Points helped you get this position out at Quaker Valley, right?
Nuncy knew in those days, 60s and the 70s and the 80s. I mean, he knew jobs when they were coming available before they even came available.
That's right.
And I got the call from him. I was still on the road with the Letterman, and he said, "Hey, rumor has it that you might want to get off the road and start a teaching career." I said, "Yeah." I said, I'm like 39 years old now, and I said, I'd really like to get married and have some kids and just, stuff like that. And I don't know, not a lot of women are going to put up with a schedule. Hey, I'll see you in 13, 14 weeks, that kind of stuff. So he says, "Well, I think something's going to come open at Quaker Valley. Why don't you apply?" And that's when I met Walt Yacobucci and Jim Drake, two great guys, just great guys. And I went to the interview, and Jim was with the administrators, and I got hired. And all of a sudden, I'm a middle school and high school choir director.
Yeah, and then how long were you at Quaker Valley before you applied for the job at North Allegheny?
Well, it was only a year, and honestly, it was almost it was almost an accident because I was happy there, and there was a teacher that had taught there, and she just really liked what I was doing, and all of a sudden she gets an administrative position at North Allegheny, and it was the end of the school year, and she goes, "Hey, look, you know what? We lost our choir director up here. I think you would be a great fit." And I said, "Well, She goes, "No, I want you up here." And she just went, and I said, "Well, I'm happy here." She goes, "No, I want you up here." And I said, "Okay." And and she sent me the application. That's when paper applications. And honestly, Vito, I forgot about it. She called, "Hey, the deadline is today. You did put that in." I said, "No, I didn't." She called me everything under the sun. So here I'm driving up and writing out the application on the steering wheel of my car. And I got it in at 10 minutes to 4, and you had to have it in by 4, never thinking I'd get called. And I got called. And I went and interviewed, and it was really pretty much too good to pass up.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
mean,
turned out
he was in on that.
turned out to be a great job for you, and you did a great job there. And I want to show a picture of your concert choir here. Look at this. How many?
Well, that's 9 through 12. Concert choir is in there. That's
Yeah.
when we had about 380 singers.
My goodness. How did you all get them to be quiet at one time?
I yelled.
You know, that's a lot of kids.
They bought me a T-shirt that says, "I'm not yelling, I'm Italian." That's what the kids bought me.
I remember, and one of the things that concerned me, because I know when you were rehearsing these groups, you were singing the soprano part to the bass part.
Yeah, I sang every part. I know.
And I told you, I could tell when you would come on the job on a gig with us and sing, and I could tell your voice was like a little bit challenged. And I said,
On Fridays, if we had a gig on a Friday night, I was singing off the back teeth, and then Saturday I was all right, and then Sunday I was at church singing too. So,
but that's a
what
beautiful.
one doctor said about my throat. He goes, "When did you rest?" I said, "Well, I guess I didn't."
And I remember, there's another picture I want to show. This is kind of cool. In your class,
That's my chamber choir. Yeah.
Chamber choir, and I remember going to several of their concerts in that church in
Methodist Church in Ingomar, United Methodist Church.
Okay, yeah,
Great
and
place to
what a
have concerts.
phenomenal group that you had there, and that's a nice picture with your students.
Honestly, Vito, let me stop you for a second. I mean, as much fun as I had as a musician with all those bands, especially the Lettermen and Gigolo and everything, but I would not trade my days with those kids, those 27 years, and Quaker Valley as well. I would not trade that for anything.
Yeah, I agree.
Honestly, it was a little bit of a business move too, if I might be very brutally honest with you. That maybe there's someone out there that I could maybe learn from this.
Yeah,
I knew that I'm getting to the age where I better make a move now, because I never had a steady salary. I never had a pension, never had health benefits, and those were all very attractive to me too. So not only was it that I loved with the kids, I think it was the right business move for me to make too, to set me up, because I put in another whole career, another 27 years of teaching.
Mhm.
So it was wonderful, wonderful, and it's still going strong. The young man who took my place was one of our former students, David Schmick, and he is just killing it. I mean, just has skills that I don't even possess. And that's how you want to leave a job. You want to leave a job that's going very well, and let the next person take it even to a higher level, which he's done. And don't forget, he had to cope with COVID too.
Oh,
The bottom fell out on a lot of it. He's back now. It's strong as ever. And Bob Tozier's there, Sarah Lavelle, Todd Steffen. They've got a great staff, and they're going full blast. Brian Sable took Lisa's job when she retired, and they're a good team. Let me stop there too. If we're going to start talking about education a little bit, the one thing I learned when I was teaching at North Allegheny is, the guy or gal that's at the top, in other words, has the kids their senior high school
Sure.
years. they automatically get a lot of the attention, a lot of attention. But let us not forget, and you should know this too as an educator, you're going to agree. If it wasn't for these elementary teachers instilling that love and for music and interest in music, and then passing them on to the middle school, then passing them on to the next teacher, that wouldn't have happened at North Allegheny. I didn't do that on my own. I had a lot of help. And let me just put one in. I mean, my first 10 years at North Allegheny, I did grades 9 through 12. Finally, thank goodness, Dr. Butterini, the principal, and John Schwobel, principal at the intermediate high school. This is too much for him. He has to cut kids and let's bring a teacher up. And I said, yeah, I want Lisa. I want my wife up there. That's when the program took off. Whenever I had Lisa come up, she is undoubtedly one of the best choral directors in the entire state. I mean, you don't go to Johns Hopkins School of Music and get a vocal performance degree in opera unless you know what you're doing. So when she came in and was added to that feeder system, that's when that program really took off. So it wasn't only me.
9th and 10th grade, right? 9th and 10th grade she did.
So a shout out to elementary teachers, middle school teachers, that are in there starting these kids for us.
And can I interject one thing here, Ernie?
Sure.
You and Lisa are going to be grandparents in about a month for the first time. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, our oldest daughter, Lexi, and her husband, Pete Donovan, they live in London, England, and both working out there. And she is due February 18th, a little baby girl. So.
Yeah, and you're getting ready to go to London, you and Lisa.
We are.
Time out there. That's good. And we had another one of my fraternity brothers jump on and make a comment here. Tony Carfang. He's also in Naples right now. Looking good, Vito. Great stories. They're enjoying the stories, Ernie. So, with that, I have to play before we end this show here. I have to play one clip of you singing with We Three, one of the Italian songs, and there's a story behind this. It's a beautiful song. It's called Chitarra suona più piano. Guitar, play softly for me. And I love the song. I heard the song. The artist in Italy was Nicola Di Bari. And I remember hearing the song, and I just fell in love with the song. And the words are difficult. And I'm not like you, I don't speak Italian, but I learned the language through singing and through the songs. And, I remember we were doing the album, I think it was the Salute album, or it was Buonafesta album, one of the albums. And I said to you, I went into the studio in Dormont, aircraft studio, and Ed Dukestein, of course, he was our engineer from the second album on, and then he came as our engineer for the live shows with the band. But anyhow, I said, I want to sing this song. I'm going to record this song. So what I did was, and this goes under remember I said, we have stories, good, bad, and the ugly. This is one of the ugly stories. I recorded the song. I had the rhythm section, and we did everything, sent everybody home. And just Ed and I were there. I went into the booth, put the headset on. I'm standing in front of the microphone. I'm hearing the track in my ears, and I sing Chitarra suona più piano. And I love this song, right? So I said, Ed, when we finished, I said, put it on a cassette tape for me, because in my home, I could play a cassette and we could hear it in the kitchen. There were speakers in the ceiling. And I figured when I'm having dinner with my wife and my children, I could play this recording. So I play. So, Vito and Gina are like young teens. I mean, they had to be, I don't know, 14. Maybe Vito was 14, Gina was 12, something like that. So I played the recording. I said, kids, I just recorded this in the studios for our next album. I want you to listen to this and let me know what you think. So I played the cassette, and it ends. And Vito, 14-year-old Vito, looks at me. They say kids never lie. He looks at me and he says, Dad, stick to playing the accordion. And so I got up out of my chair. I went over. We had a phone on the wall in the kitchen.
Yeah.
dialed your number. I said, Ernie, you have one more song to learn for this album.
Yeah.
He taught us piano, and then we taught you the lyrics and taught you how to do the song.
Beautiful. It's my favorite song. It's my favorite
here's
song that we've done.
a clip from that song. I want to play this before we let you go.
Stringi cuscino e sospira. La luna ferma nel cielo. La lucciol sul melo. Chitarra mia suona più piano. Anche se incerta la mano, suona chitarra che è l'ora di darle tutto il bene che è nel cuore, di dire addio per sempre o per denare e amarla come un altro non può fare. L'ora di respirare un sorso d'aria pura, un prato è verde quando è primavera.
Beautiful. Beautiful song.
Yeah, it really is.
It's my favorite of all the ones with that, and there was a few others too, but that's definitely my favorite.
Well, Ernie, I want to thank you for being my guest on the maiden voyage of Memories of a Musician.
It was a blast. It was a blast. I
I'm
love it.
so happy that you agreed to do this.
Hey, can I send a shout out? I know two of my good friends, Ray and Frank Filatico,
I'm glad you mentioned that. I want to play their little piece down here. I have to go in here.
that was a real highlight in my career with that
Tell
Pirates.
them about this. Tell them about that.
Yeah, well, I was in the Lettermen. It took us a while to record this because I wasn't home that much. But if I was home for 3 or 4 or 5 days, we spent it in the studio. And the Pirates heard the demo and they picked it up. And boy, they just played it for the 1990 and the 91 Pittsburgh Pirates. And it's a great tune written by Frank and Ray Filatico. And I'm glad they chose me to sing it because it was a blast.
Uh-huh.
They're dear friends to this day.
Let me see. Listen to a little shot of this.
Sure.
This is from 1990, the Pirates.
1990. Yeah.
Pirates.
Mark Mattio's playing guitar on this.
Remember the heartbreaks. Remember the tears. Getting it all together takes so many years. Remember the close ones, and there were a few. You never gave up trying, wanting to come through. Well, this is your moment. You've learned how to fly. We'll remember that long road once more, then kiss it goodbye. You gotta believe it's your turn. You gotta believe it's true. In Pittsburgh we believe the Pirates will come through. You gotta believe it's your turn. You gotta believe it's true. You know that we believe 'cause we believe in you.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
That was fun.
I want to say hi to Ray and Frank Filatico too, because I know these guys.
They're good guys. They're great
the
guys.
first guys in Western Pennsylvania to have a Fairlight.
Yeah, they were the first. That whole song was done on Fairlight.
Yeah. That,
The only live musician there is Mark Mattio playing guitar. The guitar
Okay.
solo is Mark.
yeah, they were terrific musicians in Elwood City. And we have another connection with Elwood City. We're going to bring on somewhere down the line a guy that produced a movie that I did the film score for, Dave Petty. He's originally from Elwood.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So anyhow, Ernie, we're going to call it a night. And I
This has been fun,
appreciate
buddy.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And it's always good to see you. It's always good to talk with you. Have a safe trip to London. And
Well,
I'm going to close out. I'm going to take you off the stage here, and
I love Alana and little Vito and Gina too, and Dave, Santina, all of them.
give our best to all your Lisa and your Lexi and Pete and everybody, and Lizzie, and Lizzie's getting married in August.
Lizzie's getting married in August. Yeah. So,
wow, unbelievable.
Yeah,
and that's good. I hope to be there for that wedding.
Hope you are too, buddy.
Okay. All right. You take care.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. I'm going to say goodnight to you. And the next Wednesday, we're going to have a guest by the name of Terry Harr. And Terry Harr was a member of We Three in the early days. He wasn't the first saxophone player. It was the second one. So I want to say from about 1970, 71, till I left to go to the University of Miami, which was about January of 74. Terry was, and then Terry and I stayed friends throughout the years. He became the head of the engraving department for Columbia Pictures Publications, which is CPP Bellwin now. And he did many lead sheets and all kinds of writing and things. Very talented musician. And so we're going to have Terry on the next episode. So I want to say goodnight to everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you for joining us this evening for Memories of a Musician. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. And please share my show information with your family and friends. Be sure to tune in next Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn for another episode of Memories of a Musician.